All right, good evening and welcome to American Advocates. On today's topic, we're going to be discussing obviously the very politically trending topic right now, the Trump tariffs, and how the Supreme Court of the United States has ruled against these tariffs, or at least in large part against them, and the method in which Trump has been establishing and enforcing them. I'm going to cover all the details on this episode, specifically in regards to the fact that Trump will still actually be able to carry out most, if not all, of these tariffs, but will just be to implement them through a different means. I'm going to cover all of that, the various different trades acts that he'll be able to use, as well as what's going on with this SCOTUS ruling, the dissenters, what they had to say, and what the Trump administration has to say. All the possible outcomes, all going to be discussed right here, right now on American Advocates. Now, according to CNN, President Donald Trump could be heard during a breakfast apparently saying, "These fucking courts." And I had to laugh at that because it's so true. This Trump administration has been plagued by these courts, especially the low-level courts. Not as much the Supreme Court itself, though they have been a burden to this administration, but the low-level district courts, which in all honesty, we're at a point in this administration, we're at a point in his second term now, we're at a point for America as a whole, in my opinion, where Trump should largely be ignoring these courts just outright. Biden even bragged during his administration that he ignored the Supreme Court rulings as well. Trump should be doing the same thing, but that's kind of besides the point here. SCOTUS, of course, ruled heavily against the Trump tariffs in a 6-3 ruling, where three of them dissented. Trump openly called the majority SCOTUS ruling as unconstitutional and very unpatriotic, where he'd go on to imply that some of these SCOTUS judges were very likely swayed by foreign influence. He didn't go into specifics on that, but he outright pretty much implied that. He said that it was also a smaller foreign influence than what you would be surprised to learn, and on top of that, he wound up basically to go on and insult the courts, like I said. So the ruling was authored by Chief Justice John Roberts. This is a guy who has gone against the grain on Republican agendas in the past, and I'm going to cover that in a second as well. But Chief Justice John Roberts basically ruled against, he's ruled against a lot of key conservative decisions, in all honesty. His ruling, of course, being in this scenario, he said that the IEEPA does not let the president impose unlimited tariffs without clear congressional approval. And the IEEPA is the International Emergency and Economic Protection Act. This is what Trump was using essentially to justify these Trump tariffs and impose them on the other countries. So, hang on one second here. Yes. So the IEEPA Act is what Trump was using to justify the tariffs. Friday Night Live, let's fucking go, says Glenn. Hey, welcome to the chat, Glenn. Yes, please be sure if you're tuning in to like this stream right now. It helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. Also, subscribe to American Advocates for more content like this if you haven't already. We're going to be breaking down all of this, guys. We're going to be breaking down the SCOTUS ruling. We're going to be breaking down what the Trump administration can do going forward to continue tariffing these countries and continue hopefully balancing global trade. I've been very open in my support of the Trump tariffs on this channel. I actually like them overall. I think it's a sacrifice play from the Trump administration to be imposing them. But at the end of the day, and as critical as I've been of Trump over the past, I'd say 6 to 7 months overall as a whole, this is one of the things that Trump is doing that I actually commend him for. It's a sacrifice play because it definitely is not going to be something that Americans look kindly on overall, at least in the short term. But it's a very long-term play. And it's unusual for Trump actually to, yeah, exactly, Glenn. Tariffs are a short-term pain for a long-term benefit, exactly. And it's an unusual play on the Trump administration's part, in all honesty, where Trump doesn't really seem to have too much long-term strategy. But the tariffs have been needed for a long time. They're actually critical for America as a whole, for our well-being and our economy. So I'm going to cover all that here. Now, back on point here, Chief Justice John Roberts was the one who authorized the ruling of the Supreme Court to go against the Trump tariffs here. And he's no stranger to going against the Republicans and the GOP and siding with Democrats on certain topics. For instance, Chief Justice John Roberts paved the way on allowing Obamacare to remain in place. In the case of NFIB versus Sebelius in 2012, he saved the Affordable Care Act. And he did so by essentially referring to this as an individual mandate. He called it a tax rather than a penalty. And this allowed the act to stand under Congress's power to tax. This created a massive loophole that the Obama administration exploited, and Roberts was basically essentially rewriting the law at that time to make Obamacare constitutional. This was one of the first instances where Chief Justice John Roberts hit a lot of GOP conservatives' radar as the kind of guy that would side with Democrats and really not toe the party line in any meaningful way. And I'm not for towing party lines, of course. I advocate against that on this channel overall, which again is why I'm so critical of this administration as a whole. But the bottom line is Chief Justice John Roberts has stood in the way of Republicans on key components and on key agenda points here, like Obamacare. On top of that, Chief Justice John Roberts also made a critical mistake, in my opinion, when it came to citizenship in the census count. He did this right before the 2020 census count, of course, where in 2019 he blocked President Trump's push to add a simple citizenship question to the census count. A question, quite frankly, that should already be in the census count. But he called it pretextual and arbitrary. And this was critical, of course, because like I said, it happened right before the 2020 census count. Now, of course, we're revisiting a lot of those issues for the upcoming 2030 census count. And that's, of course, why this Trump administration at least campaigned on the idea of mass deportations and illegal immigration / immigration reform, because that census count is critical. And many point to it and the errors of not looking for citizens to only be counted in the census as a means of how the Democrats continually stay in power and win so many more elections than they very likely should be. And Chief Justice John Roberts stood at the forefront of resisting the Trump administration's efforts to sort of at least try to reform the census count. He may not have been completely wrong in calling it arbitrary, because adding a citizenship question is not really going to solve the problem. But the fact that he stood against it at all is also disheartening itself. So, Keystone Liberty, welcome to the chat, man. Good to have you back here as well. You said there is too much judicial oversight in the United States. I favor going back to duels. Yeah. Well, the whole thing is I think we're waiting and hoping for something that'll never come. But the reality, like I said, just at the very beginning of this episode, the stream right now, was that Trump needs to start ignoring the courts. I mean, in all honesty, he needs to pull the Andrew Jackson, and he needs to dare Chief Justice John Roberts to come enforce his ruling, because all this is, at the end of the day, is just the courts once again working against this administration. And, as critical as I've been of this administration and its handling of foreign affairs as a whole, minus Venezuela, which I like, or minus the idea, at least, of taking Greenland, absorbing Cuba, all of the foreign wars, all of that stuff I've been critical of, our support in Ukraine, etc. I've been critical of a lot of his Trump losing sight on what really matters when it comes to economic populism, the cost of living. But despite that, it's like, not only are we getting this distracted version of Trump who isn't really living up to his campaign promises, who's botching the release of the Epstein files, etc., but now the good stuff, the stuff that I actually like that Trump at least tried to implement, is also being hindered in disastrous fashion. So it's all just a mess, in all honesty. It's a complete mess. But there is hope when it comes to these Trump tariffs, and I want to cover that in a second here. But yes. Actually, yes. Okay, hang on. I lost my point here. It's been a while since I've broadcast out of the actual house. My mom's basement. But yeah, so I got my notes pulled up on my screen rather than written down. In regards to this ruling, what I found fascinating were the three dissenters and the very assertive statements and passionate statements that they made regarding these Trump tariffs being ruled against by the Supreme Court in a 6-3 ruling. Justice Clarence Thomas dissented angrily, saying neither the statutory text nor the Constitution provide a basis for ruling against the president. Kavanaugh also dissented, saying the effect on the U.S. Treasury could be significant. And this was the main issue and the main problem. What? You don't live in your car? No, I do. We gotta keep the illusion intact, Glenn. I live in my car, man. I am homeless. I'm a homeless just like every other conservative because only liberals know how to manage money and are rich, right? It's always liberals that are rich, right? Right? They're definitely not the ones living off of entitlements and benefits and welfare, right? Anyway, uh, Justice Kavanaugh's dissent on the effects of the U.S. Treasury being significant, this was the main fear of most people when it came to this ruling, and most speculation centered around what the ruling would be and how the Supreme Court would factor this in, because it could be an issue. Now, Trump has stated right off the bat when it comes to these tariffs that they're generating close to $300 billion annually for the United States. And that's a large reason why, one of the many large reasons why I love the Trump tariffs overall and why I love the idea of the tariffs. Also, by the way, it's one of the reasons why the Democrats were in favor of this in the 90s. They've simply flipped their script now that it's the evil orange fascist in office who's actually taking the initiative to impose them again and at least try to attempt to balance the very unfair global trade scales. Nevertheless, $300 billion annually for the United States is a massive benefit to us as a whole, at least as a country. It was never going to be a case where the Americans were going to feel that directly. It's not like you'd be opening up your wallets because of that with cash inside of them. But it is good for our country, and as a Christian nationalist, I still like when Trump makes decisions that benefit our country, especially in the long term. It's also a massive chunk of Trump's plan for his second term. A lot of what he's planning on, a lot of his agenda, I'd say 40 to 50% of it, in all honesty, actually hinge off of the Trump tariffs remaining in effect. So that's why this is potentially a massive blow to the Trump administration. Especially because the admin could be staring down the barrel of over $175 billion in possible refunds that would need to be reissued to the importers due to the tariff-generated revenue. Now, of course, the IEEPA is separated from other sections of different trade acts, which Trump has called upon to enforce these trades, or these tariffs rather. But even under the category of the IEEPA, we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars at least, and it could be, according to some projections, in the billions, in the hundreds of billions. And so that's the scary thing about it. Now, the refund amount, if it's 175 billion, I wrote down here this amount because I've looked up government spending in correlation. The refund amount would exceed the combined government spending we've seen in 2025 on transportation and justice, for instance. And so it's huge. It's potentially huge. It's potentially threatening to our economy, in all honesty. And that's why I view it as a very reckless decision made by this Supreme Court here, because they're already in effect. And we've already seen a precedent laid out in the past where other presidents, like Nixon, for instance, have imposed tariffs of their own. And of course, that never really got called into question. But now that it's Trump, of course, it's all catastrophe. It's all disaster. Of course, as well, now you have importers. They're already out there. The thirsty importers are like, well, we demand a refund then. This is crazy. So you have the importers demanding quick refunds. They're suing now, and they're demanding fast and automatic returns based off of this SCOTUS ruling. And you have Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. He's come out there. He came out there before the SCOTUS ruling, actually. I think he came out yesterday or 2 days ago. And he insisted. He said the Treasury could handle any necessary refunds if needed. But there's a gray area here when it comes to SCOTUS and the refunds. I'm going to cover that in a second. I'll take a look at a couple of chats here. John Roberts is a hemorrhoid ass, says Lou Becker. I agree. I'm going to show that comment too because it got hidden for some reason. How the fuck does it matter when they are eating our babies, says Cowboy Troy. Listen, man, not everything's about Epstein. I cover that enough on this channel as it is. Trump this, Dems that, wake up, says Cowboy Troy. Wow, you're so enlightened, Cowboy Troy. You're so enlightened. Wow, thank you. In fact, Chad, I'm gonna change the entire topic of this stream. From now on, I'll never cover any news other than Epstein. Just for Cowboy Troy, because that's the only thing that fucking matters in this country, isn't it? Just Epstein. Epstein all the time. Epstein, guys, from now on, 24/7 Epstein stream. Let's just cover Epstein. I don't do that enough on this channel. I don't devote entire episodes to that as it is. So, guys, it's the only thing that matters. This Trump tariff ruling, it doesn't fucking matter at all. $175 billion in potential refunds might have to be issued that would put a massive dent in our treasury and our economy as a result. But it doesn't matter because there's babies that might have been turned into jerky on Epstein Island. Might have been, by the way. Might have been. Can't even prove that. So there you go. I hope you're happy, Cowboy Troy. I hope that really makes you jizz in your pants. Let's just talk about Epstein, guys. It's the only thing that matters. I don't cover that at length on this channel at all as it is. God, you fucking stupid cuck. How does it matter? What about Epstein, huh? Why are you protecting pedos? Shut the fuck up. God. God. Go bitch to your husband, Cowboy Troy. Go bitch to your husband about Epstein, okay? And Trumpstein. Oh, Trumpstein this, Trumpstein that. Shut up. God. Insufferable. There was a strong pushback against Nixon's tariffs. Yeah, were there? And what happened with that, Bryant, whatever your fucking guys? Create some better usernames. At least Cowboy Troy's username is easy to read. Bryant T S Pross 14. Fuck. We gotta get boomers off the internet, man. They come up with these stupid usernames and shit. They don't even bother to change anything. Glenn, see Glenn, nice simple username. Glenn. I need more of that in my chat. Gary the Snail, I'll take even. Are you spreading any good news this evening? Says Gary the Snail. I'm spreading partly bad news, partly good news, Gary. You might actually want to stick around for it. I'm actually defending Trump for once, Gary, because I actually like the Trump tariffs. Thank you, you damn idiot. Oh, man. It blows my mind that people like Cowboy Troy exist. Like, he's going to be out there. He's going to be in the chat talking about, like, vampires on Epstein Island. Don't you understand there's lizard people running around the world and vampires, and you're here talking about Trump tariffs and the American economy? Wake up, people, please. I'm trying to catch up on chat before I move forward on this. Trump the dumbass tard. Okay. I'll show that. I don't know why YouTube would hide that one. Well, that's my name. My parents weren't, whatever. Okay, whatever. I'm just going to call you Brian. The response to Nixon's tariffs were pretty much Ronald Reagan. Yeah, but, well, the whole point is, where was SCOTUS for the Nixon tariffs? Was SCOTUS there to strike it down and tell the president what he can or can't do? That's my point. Cuck much? That would be you. That would be you, Reed Pad. You cucked for Kamala. I bet you got down on your knees like a good boy and voted for Kamala. You know, the plant that the Democrats put there to supplant Biden. I bet you were real enthusiastic about that. I agree with some of the things you say, but I just don't like taxes and tariffs or taxes. Tariffs are not taxes. I'm actually going to cover that a little bit later. I'm going to literally debunk that myth and that notion that tariffs are taxes. They're literally not taxes. There's actually no way to argue against what I'll tell you when it comes to tariffs not being taxes in just a few minutes here. Back on point here. What will happen now, basically? Well, first and foremost, when it comes to Scott Bessent, he insists the Treasury has the capital to cover any refunds if needed. But what's even more important to note here is, in their official ruling, SCOTUS did not actually cover the topic of refunds. Though they were addressed in the ruling, SCOTUS never made a ruling on how the administration should proceed when it comes to refunds. They actually seem to ignore that in their ruling. And so we're not even sure. We're kind of unsure about where the administration will go from here. But what's actually already becoming more and more certain is how Trump can rebound from this and very likely keep most, if not all, of these tariffs in place still. Because SCOTUS did not actually rule against the Trump tariffs themselves. They ruled against the means in which he's implementing them. So I'm going to cover that in a second. But I wanted to talk about Justice Kavanaugh dissenting in the 6-3 ruling, because he stated basically this is not likely to greatly restrict presidential tariff authority going forward. For instance, steel and aluminum tariffs are under different laws and they remain fully in place. Some of the affected tariffs in this SCOTUS ruling are largely the reciprocal ones. And these are important too, because this is what's supposed to be balancing trade, global trade. And yes, there is a trade deficit. And yes, these countries have raked us over the coals and they've been taking advantage of our kindness. And so we have instances where, like, the 34% China tariffs, 10% baseline global tariffs, and the 25% on Canada, China, and Mexico over what the ones that Trump claimed were over the fentanyl crisis at our borders, those are largely affected in the short term right now. But Trump can still impose most, if not all, of the tariffs, truthfully, just not under the IEEPA, which is, again, the International Emergency and Economic Powers Act. So that's what SCOTUS ruled against. He just can't use IEEPA. But we have different sections of various different trade acts here that Trump can continue to use to justify implementing the tariffs at various different rates. A lot of them are not even restrictive. The immediate band-aid slap on this issue that Trump is using, he signed it today in fact, is Section 122, which allows Trump to continue imposing tariffs for 150 days at up to 15%. Now, Trump signed this into effect at only a 10% rate globally, so he didn't even max out the 15% threshold. He puts it at 10%. He signed it into effect today. The downside, of course, is that this will automatically expire in 150 days, and Trump really won't be able to do too much about that. It expires in 150 days, end of story. But it's going to buy this administration quite a bit of time, and during that time, they'll be able to utilize two different other sections of different trade acts here, which will allow Trump to essentially continue, I believe, imposing most, if not all, of the tariffs still, regardless. So first and foremost, the one that's important to note here and how Trump can continue on enforcing these tariffs. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. This is one of the big ones. This one allows the president to slap tariffs on imports if the Commerce Department finds that they threaten national security. Now, the Department of Commerce can conduct an investigation on foreign goods to determine if they're hurting our defense industry or our national security. Now, of course, the Secretary of Commerce is Howard Lutnick. Howard Lutnick is a Trump ass kisser. There's no way around that. I first found him very amusing early on because I actually liked his positive optimism on our economy and what this administration would do going forward. Now I'm a little bit more against him, in all honesty. He seems more shady the more information we get on him, and Cowboy Troy will jizz his pants over this one. He's shady because of his involvement with Epstein, actually. Something that Cowboy Troy doesn't know, but I covered extensively as it is in prior episodes on this channel. Howard Lutnick had lunch on Epstein Island in 2012, 4 years after Epstein was already convicted in Florida of some of his disgusting behaviors, right? And this was after Epstein actually had to serve a sweetheart deal where he had to check himself in and out of prison, I believe in 12 to 14 hour increments daily or on weekends or whatever they do for rich people. Lutnick sailed by Little St. James and decided to have lunch on the island with his family. So that's kind of shady. Lutnick's original 9/11 story, also very shady. Especially when you realize Lutnick was neighbors with Jeffrey Epstein in New York City. And Lutnick, if I remember reading correctly, he was supposed to be a victim of 9/11, but conveniently, I think he decided to drive his children to school that day, which made him late for work, if I remember the story right. Some sort of ridiculousness in where Howard Lutnick got very lucky, right? And that story's been out there for a long time. And so I've soured on Lutnick quite a bit, to be honest with you. But he's the Secretary of Commerce, and the bottom line is the administration is not looking to get rid of Lutnick or make him resign over the Epstein allegations and over the information that we know about him now. So he's not going anywhere, it seems. And being a Trump ass kisser, this Commerce Department will definitely cooperate with Trump fully when it comes to investigating these foreign goods and determining that they do, in fact, hurt our defense industry and national security. And in truth, they do. And this was one of the large main reasons why Trump imposed these tariffs. It's to restore our country. It is the short-term pain versus long-term gain that's going to matter here and why these tariffs are so fundamental for America's future. This investigative clause under Section 232 can be stretched quite a bit because you can really look at it through a biased lens, which I hope this administration does just outright. I hope they do. I don't want these tariffs to go anywhere. And they will, of course. The biases involved in all administrations, and they do so according to their lens. And so what you can do you can stretch this, you can start applying this to steel, right? You can apply it to chips, chip manufacturers, copper, auto, lumber, all of it basically will fall under the Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. You could easily craft a narrative that's pretty justifiable, in fact, on how these materials coming in are damaging or hurting our national security and defense industry. And under Section 232, most importantly, there's no time limit or hard cap limit percentage-wise when it comes to Trump using or implementing the tariffs under this section. So unlike Section 122, where there's a 150-day expiration date on the tariffs, that Trump signed into effect today to keep global tariffs at 10%. Section 232, which they're going to get up and running during these 150 days, no doubt, using the Commerce Department to investigate, will not have any time limit under it or hard cap limit. And this will allow Trump to essentially continue implementing most, if not all, of his tariffs, justifying it as a national security issue. Now, they'll have to challenge this once again. Low-level district courts will try to strike this down. And we all know low-level district courts collectively are actually the president in this country, it seems, because this administration and this administration's Department of Justice and this Congress currently is content to allow that to be. And that's perhaps the most frustrating element in all of this, and how, once again, Democrats are continuing to flex a power that they shouldn't have. They use literal peon low-level district court judges to impede the fucking executive branch and president of the United States. Meanwhile, the cucked conservatives do absolutely nothing about it but whine and cry to their constituents and to Fox News and in the newspapers and etc., right? But Congress, very early on, as well as I'm sure Senate with John Thune would back this, they said they would not be impeaching judges who interfered. And so that's what they'll do, and this will once again have to get challenged. But the whole point is Trump will go through with Section 232 without a doubt, and it'll take a lot of time for that case to go before the Supreme Court, etc. On top of that, we have Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. And this is the other big component. This is the other 50% here. In combination with 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 allows U.S. trade representatives to investigate foreign countries for issues in our trade with other countries. Issues like stealing our IP, like China, for instance, or issues in subsidies, like Canada's dairy, for instance, and Canada's lumber. We buy Canada's lumber as a kind gesture. We don't need it. We also allow Canada to impose these ridiculous dairy taxes, well, tariffs on us, essentially, at 250 to 300% at some points in time, and we just allow it. We allow Canada to use their dairy tariffs to protect their dairy farmers, all in the name of corrupt dairy farmer mafia-level schemes going on up there, by the way. I did a video on that as it is and covered how just corrupt Canada's dairy farmers are as a whole up there, and how they really lobby their government up there to impose such ridiculous tariffs on America. But the fact of the matter is, all of our prior administrations have not had the balls to call out Canada on those dairy tariffs. And so the subsidies can be investigated. The stealing of IP can be investigated. Forced tech transfers can be investigated. Or anything else that's deemed unjustifiable when it comes to hurting U.S. commerce can be investigated. And when the investigations find an issue, it allows the president to immediately respond with the power to impose tariffs with no cap on rates, as well as even allows the president to outright block imports. And so these investigations can be done pretty quickly as well. I've seen some arguments here where it's basically the Democrats saying, well, these investigations mean that, it'll take forever, and by the time they're done, this presidency will be over with. It'll be 2029. Somebody was arguing with me on that on a very old video where I was discussing the Trump tariffs. But the bottom line is, these investigations in the past have been done, and they've been done quickly. We're talking in the first Trump administration, they were done in August of 2017 and concluded in March of 2018. And that allows immediately for the president, of course, to impose the tariffs. So they'll be done rather quickly. And in combination with Section 232, it's all going to come together. Section 232, of course, will be the security, addressing the security issues that this Trump administration has had when it comes to global trade. And Section 301 will address the fairness of global trade, which, of course, this administration raised awareness to, like I covered with China stealing our IP, the subsidies in Canada, etc. And so all this being said, you have Section 122 basically being the temporary Band-Aid for the next 150 days, which is a good amount of time. On top of that, you have 232 for security, 301 for fairness, and when you combine those, it's like every reason that Trump imposed all these tariffs to begin with. Even more so, the fun fact of this all is You go back in time to 1994, 1995, and you have Nancy Pelosi herself basically raising all of these issues. And I always love to point that out because the liberals don't really have a good argument for that. They say, well, that's because the Democrats recognize the issue too, but it's the way it's being done. It's the way this administration's doing it. It's like, what the fuck does that even mean? They're fucking tariffs, okay? They've been imposed. They're balancing global trade, and they're bringing back manufacturing to America. They're saving America in the long run. Bottom line. Doesn't matter who's doing it. That's the bottom line. In fact, a lot of these Trump tariffs from his first administration were kept in place by Biden, who came in and pretty much destroyed everything Trump worked for, but he kept the tariffs even. Because even the disgusting, corrupt Democrat administration recognized the benefit of the tariffs. They just did so on the quiet part. They never gave Trump credit for it. But that's where we're at with that. I'm going to cover now in a second here. I'll take a look at some chats here. But I'm going to cover why the tariffs are good and why I like them. And I'm going to be addressing more of some of the statements that SCOTUS made. Primarily, Chief Justice John Roberts during the hearings calling these tariffs a tax. And I'm going to disprove that notion outright in a way that can't be argued. Nobody in this chat will be smart enough, first of all, because it's a bunch of swine down there, I can tell already. Low IQ, double-digit IQ swine will try to say it's a tax, but it's not, and I'm going to disprove that notion very quickly, precisely, and in a way that can't be argued. And it's going to shoot down Chief Justice John Roberts' entire perspective, in all honesty, and probably in large part why he ruled against the tariffs. But at the end of the day, John Roberts just doesn't understand economics. He's a judge, not an economist. But I'll take a look at some chats here. Swig some water, too. Fuck Trump. I hate him. Oh, man. Well, sorry, lady. He's your president right now. I'm not a fan of a lot of what he's doing either, but he's the president, and I want him to do well. Yes, we know the asshole is raising our taxes again using tariffs. Tariffs are not a tax. About to shatter that narrative in a second. I'm so glad I don't live in India. Me too. Imagine having to eat cow shit and throw your trash in your rivers, which is your drinking water, you know? All right, let's see. A lot of useless chats, which is what I expect from Goy. I expect the cattle down there to be useless. No valuable perspectives from most of you. Trump's name is in the Epstein files 38,000 times. No one cares. The U.S. dollar is worth nothing due to the trade deficit we have. The dollar shrinking in global value was something I predicted on this channel, but it's not. It's actually not as big of a problem as people make it out to be. I'll cover that on a different time, or you can just go look up my video where I talk about it from last year when I started this channel. Trade douchebag act. Yeah, you can be mad all you want. It doesn't matter. The cattle are stirring on Friday night, says Glenn. They're swine, they're cattle, they're anything but intelligent human beings, aren't they, Glenn? Well, since you're so smart, you would know that the Ganges is a very yeah, exactly, Etta Jade. Yes, it has antibacterial properties. Why don't you watch a document? Yes. Well, that's because the Indian sand demons and gods have blessed that river. They blessed it. Now, I'm sure Etta Jade is an atheist, but she's willing to believe in any other god other than the Christian God, without a doubt. And yeah, antibacterial properties. They've definitely never tested the water in any documentary that I've seen. River monsters, Jeremy Wade swimming in it, testing the water and showing all the disgusting shit in that river. Yeah, that's an episode that you wouldn't want to watch if you actually believe what you're spewing. But I believe you're just rage baiting, Etta Jade. So I forgive you. Now, go make me a sandwich. Carpe Diem says, where are these manufacturing plants? Exactly where are they? How many people do they employ? I'll wait. Well, that's part of the problem, too, that I've addressed in the past as well. And the Supreme Court played into the hands of these companies, by the way, who are kind of counting on this happening. They're counting on this result. We all know how this plays out. I'll cover that real briefly, because I actually did not write that down in my notes to discuss, but it is a topic I'm passionate about. One of the main issues when it comes to reshoring in this country is the fact that these companies, they bank on the fact that the president is limited by terms, especially when it comes to Trump, who had his term split up, of course. Trump is a lame duck by definition because After these 3 years are up, that's it. And so these companies bank on that in a way. They bank on the fact that our political landscape tends to shift every 4 to 8 years. And so these companies will agree to, in circumstances like this, we've seen it. They make pledges. They say, we'll pledge $110 million towards reshoring in America because we respect you, Mr. Trump, and we respect the tariffs, and we want to avoid those. We want to keep our prices competitive for the sake of the American marketplace, which is, of course, the most desirable marketplace in the world, where we are a consumer nation. Even during a cost of living crisis and affordability issue like we're experiencing, we are still a consumer nation. And so these companies, they want to stay competitive, so they say, we'll reshore if that means you won't tariff us. And Trump says, yeah, no problem. So they say, well, the thing is, though, it's going to take us about 5 years to reshore fully, but you won't tariff us if we pledge to reshore and put hundreds of millions in investing towards that. And unfortunately, even in the case with Trump, who should be smarter than that, he agrees to it. And in some cases, Trump has been smarter than that. Trump insists on it being done in 4 years so that he can oversee the complete act of them reshoring. But he's granted some of these companies longer than that. And the bottom line is they're going to slow roll it. They're going to pledge the investment. They're going to pledge to reshoring in 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 years. And they're going to slow roll it. And you're going to see the first 3 to 4 years of that development of them reshoring slowed down to a grinding halt almost. It's going to be 2 workers on a site putting up steel beams and whatnot, right? Like, it's the slowest possible rate because what they want and what they're hoping for is for Trump to finish up his term and then for a Democrat to get elected who won't have the balls to hold their feet to the fire when it comes to tariffs. And that is a problem. That's just an undeniable problem. And so where are the manufacturing plants? Well, some of them have been being built. I believe Honda's been working pretty steady. Hyundai's been another one. We have, I think, Stellantis. Stargate is another example as well. And so there are some being built, undeniably so. But it is a problem for sure. You know, I can't argue against that when it is actually an observable historical pattern pretty much at this point when it comes to reshoring businesses here. Now, Keystone Liberty says, Democrat Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz from Florida has become Nancy Pelosi's replacement. Okay. Lame duck. He's the most active president in my lifetime. Yeah, you're not understanding what the term lame duck means, Kenneth Moratti. You're not understanding. Trump is limited in this term. And he's going to be more of a lame duck when they lose midterms this year, which is very likely. It's really sad that the best you can do. What? I think you should pledge to educate yourself instead of pretending but you don't have standards, says Etta Jade. You just don't know. By the way, you know what pledge I say? I say it to that beautiful flag back there, right? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's where I put my pledge. I'm sure you don't do that, Etta Jade, though. I'm sure Etta Jade is the kind of person that has white guilt and American guilt and doesn't like the pledge. You should at least remove the under God part. I mean, it's very offensive to all of the atheists in this country. Fuck the atheists. Pledge allegiance to the flag, bitch. Why do lefties always say educate yourself and then literally don't? Lefties think that their education makes them smart, but the bottom line is their education makes them even more brainwashed and delusional. And Etta Jade looks like a woman. It's the women that eat up the propaganda the most. They're the ones that even George Orwell addressed this issue. The women eating up the propaganda became the most outspoken bigots in our society. They became the biggest issue, which they are. And even more so, you can even point to the fact when I say that we're a consumer market. America is a consumer nation. Well, why is that? Who's the bulk of the consumers? It's the women. Why are they the bulk of the consumers? Because sales is propaganda. And sales works on women easier than it works on men. Men think logically. Men think with bank account numbers and wallets. Women are emotionally involved in purchases and sales. And so if you can trigger their emotional response via propaganda, emotional ads, donating to puppies that are in danger overseas, blah, 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 it's the women that eat that shit up. They're easily brainwashed. We're watching women topple the college attendance rate over men. That's for a reason. Men are realizing what college has become. Women are looking at it as female empowerment campuses. But they go there for meaningless degrees. It doesn't make them more educated. It makes them more brainwashed. Okay, so why tariffs are good and why I like them. Now, I want to discuss, honestly, Chief Justice Roberts' lack of understanding on the tariffs. He referred to them as a tax during the hearings. Here's why they're not a tax. I'm about to just debunk every stupid liberal's notion that these tariffs are a tax. They're a tax on us. They're a tax. This is the largest tax hike out of any administration. I mean, it's criminal what Trump has done with these tariffs taxing us. Here's why they're not a tax. It's honestly so fucking simple. Taxes, especially federal taxes, right, which is what the tariffs basically are. Tariffs are enforced federally. Well, federal taxes, they're unavoidable. They're unavoidable. You literally can't avoid paying taxes. You must pay taxes. By definition, that's it. The taxes are federally enforced. They must be paid. Tariffs, not so much. Tariffs are actually avoidable. Do you know how you avoid paying a tariff? Don't buy a fucking foreign good. Go buy the American equivalent. Boom, tariff avoided. Therefore, by that definition, tariffs are not a tax. It's really that simple, actually. And there's no arguing that, by the way. And that's it. I'm just going to move on from that. I mean, that shatters the narrative. There's no arguing against it. The idea, actually, of tariffs, one of the main ideas of tariffs, is to encourage the purchasing of more American-made goods, in fact. So not only are tariffs not a tax because tariffs are avoidable, but that's actually the whole fucking point of tariffs, or at least half the point of it. And that goes right over liberals' heads, because liberals love China. Liberals fantasize about a society here in America that's ruled by China. They literally say China's more powerful than us. China's better than us in every way. We should submit to China. They should produce everything for us. I wish China ruled us. It's time for communism. America doesn't deserve to be free anymore. We stole this land. I'm so guilty. I'm a white person. I wish China would come in and dominate us. Well, fuck that, you fucking traitors. And fuck anybody who goes against tariffs, which are being utilized, by the way, by Trump to hurt China, which is another reason why I like tariffs, and I'll get to that in a second. But that's the bottom line. The tariffs are not a tax because tariffs can be avoided. You don't have to pay tariffs. You just don't buy products that have been tariffed. Simple. Now, a tax, now you can call them a tax on the importer, perhaps. I'd be more willing to entertain that argument because it's the importers that deal with it. But as an American consumer, no, you just don't buy it. Simple, avoidable tax. So it's not a tax. It's just a tariff. End of story. Now, secondly, the tariffs, when done right, are de facto deflationary. And this was a prediction that I made last year when everything was up in the air. Everything was up in the air, and people were saying, oh my God, these tariffs, they're going to cause inflation to spike, and we're going to... Do you remember this one? Liberals were so enthusiastic about this one. They love the idea of America being destroyed, liberals. They're fucking traitor scum. And so the liberals were all over the internet saying, we're going to hit a second Great Depression by the middle of summer 2025. What recession? What depression? They said a second Great Depression. What depression? Don't see it. They said inflation was going to spike. Meanwhile, here on this channel, because I'm literally the fucking smartest YouTuber out there, it literally doesn't get smarter than me. Like, it's a privilege for people like Etta J to be in this chat learning. She doesn't deserve the pearls that I'm casting to her swine-ass self. But she gets to be here because I'm a free speech absolutist, and I allow everybody to at least watch, right? I try not to block people unless they're spamming. And so it's a privilege, honestly, for you guys to be down there learning. And the fact of the matter is, I made this prediction that they would be deflationary. And what's happened? Well, we saw the inflation shoot up about 0.5% to 1%, right? And people were, that's it. The second Great Depression, it's going to be here by August, and that America's going to starve. And this will go down as the worst president in American history. Well, summer came and went. What we didn't get in the summer that I'm more disappointed by is no deep state arrests. I want Letitia James and Adam Schiff and, James Comey. They should be in prison rotting. We didn't get that, but we also didn't get a second Great Depression. In fact, inflation flatlined after it spiked up slightly from these tariffs, or in correlation with these tariffs, and it flatlined at 2.7%. And the liberals kept saying the entire time, they kept saying, well, it's just sitting there for a while now, and that's because of the uncertainty that's been generated, and we're just very lucky that we're not in a Great Depression yet, but it's coming next year. It's coming. You just wait. It's going to flatline at 2.7%, and then one day you're going to wake up, and it's going to be at 14, 15, 16%. It's going to be brutal. Well, that never happened either. In fact, now inflation has started lowering. It's currently sitting at 2.4%, and it just didn't explode like the Democrats predicted. Just not at all. So they're de facto deflationary, and it's just like I predicted. The reason why they're deflationary is multifold, and I'm not going to cover all the reasons why. I already did that in a video on this channel way early on when I created this channel last year. But I'll go over a couple of certain points here, things that I predicted would happen, which at the time I, of course, was called foolish over. The liberal said, well, what kind of an economist are you? You're an absolute idiot. You don't understand how this is going to work. And again, they throw in the Great Depression that's coming. But I predicted that foreign exporters would absorb part of the tariff cost. I made that prediction. The videos are still up on this channel. I'm so fucking smart. It's unreal. And that's what we saw happen, by the way. Because you know why? You know why that happens? Despite how the liberals want to view America as a piece of shit country that the entire world hates, and despite the fact that the liberals want to insist that our heyday is long behind us, nobody cares about us anymore, all the countries would rather avoid us, I accurately stated that we are the world's marketplace. We are the consumer nation of this world. We have the best economy, even now. And that means we're desirable. Every foreign company out there would love to have their products being sold here in America, or at least most would. And so when they started getting tariffed, they realized the actual problem with that. That problem, of course, being that somebody was going to pay this tariff via the importer, the exporter, or the customer. What's the worst case scenario from a business model perspective? The worst case scenario is the customer pays the tariff. Because why? Well, because like I stated just a few minutes ago here, tariffs aren't a tax because they're avoidable. And this means that Americans looking for a competitively priced product will start looking elsewhere. If what you're buying is a foreign import and all of a sudden it goes up in price by 20 or 30%, you're going to think, holy crap, I need to find something better, something cheaper, something different but the same. And there are options out there typically. Maybe not for every single product, but that is what happens in a competitive free marketplace, or at least a semi-free marketplace. I have my gripes on about how this is not truly a free market economy anymore, but it is free market enough where Americans have choices. We have options, and we'll go for the cheapest one for the most part. It's part of being a consumer nation. So the exporters look at that and they say, well, I'm just going to absorb part of this tariff cost. That way the importer doesn't have to absorb all of it, and that way the importer doesn't absorb it and then pass it on to the customer. And we saw that happen. That has been happening. In fact, over the course of 2025, the exporters started absorbing more and more of the tariff cost to keep their products competitive in our American marketplace. And that's, as a result, why that plays its part in why tariffs are de facto deflationary. Also, the uncertainty that the liberals were fear-mongering over, the uncertainty that the liberals said would ruin our economy and cause inflation to spike and the stock market to rapidly decline, something else that didn't happen, by the way. The uncertainty actually uses the liberal economist fear in a beneficial way to our economy, because it makes the businesses and consumers pull back on their spending, and it slows our economy in a semi-good way, actually. This is what cools our prices, at least in the short term. That's just one more reason. That's actually a reason I didn't cover in my original video where I stated that tariffs would be de facto deflationary. But that is what we've witnessed, and time, like everything else that I predict pretty much for the most part, has proven me wise. So you're welcome. And that's why everybody should be subscribing to this channel, because it doesn't get smarter than me. It just doesn't, honestly. Now, I'm going to cover briefly why the other reason why I love tariffs and how Trump is using them against other countries. But first, I'll take a look at some more chats here. Etta, grilled cheese, no tomato. Get on it, Etta. But Glenn's order comes after mine, okay? This is American Advocates, so my order's prioritized. And I would like turkey with pepper sprinkled on it. You need to take each slice of turkey, put it on the cutting board, grind to, I want peppercorns ground on the turkey, like, moderately so, each slice, because that's what makes the turkey flavorful. After that, it needs to be pepper jack cheese. You got to toast the bread. If you give me another sandwich that has soggy bread, there's going to be hell to pay. So toast the bread, thinly apply some light mayonnaise on it, pepper jack cheese, turkey, and I actually don't like tomato either. I'm with Glenn on that. No tomato. Now, grilled cheese with tomato is that's like an elite hack, though. That's almost where I would disagree. That's like the one sandwich where maybe I would want to, like, I put onions in my grilled cheese, but you're rambling because you like the sound of your voice. I love the sound of my voice. I watch back my live streams like 8 times. I'm just like, man, I'm so smart. It's honestly amazing. This is all deflection. No arguments from you, though, Etta Jade. You're not smart enough to contend. That's why you're here. You're here as a listener. And you can outwardly project in your chat your disapproval of my messaging, but inwardly, I know you're turned on by how intelligent I am. And you're like, my God, this guy is not only sexy, but smart, and he's been right about everything. I'm going to keep tuning in because, Etta Jade, you've been here before. You're like a loyal hate watcher, and I appreciate that. You're useful cattle. Our ability to compete with foreign markets is severely stunted due to overtax and retarded regulations. Those import fees can only do so much. Oh, let's take a look at that. Let's see. It's severely stunted due to overtax and yeah. Well, that I agree with, Edge of the South. I think part of the Conservative Party's motto is supposed to be cutting red tape and reducing regulations, which, by the way, doing so would lower our cost of living even more. And I think the Trump administration has sort of done that, but it's almost like the Trump administration had to be pressured into cutting a lot of those regulations, which again blows my mind. But then again, when you look at how Trump's handling a lot of foreign affairs right now and where his mind tends to be, which is unfortunately mostly overseas up until today, where the SCOTUS ruled against him, it seems like he has to almost like watch his approval rating drop a bit before he decides, oh, maybe we should cut some more regulations, which will lower prices in the long run. That should have already been happening. And again, this is not a MAGA cheerleader channel, so that's why I freely criticize Trump about a lot of shit. You are the best economist I know, says Nope, thank you. I'm the most accurate one, that's for sure. It sends the price back to the consumer. Why are you ignoring that? Because I just explained to your dunce ass why it doesn't always go back to the consumer. That is not a rule of law or a rule in general. It doesn't always hit the consumer, though in a lot of cases it obviously does. We saw that with coffee and beef. But the fact of the matter is, then my argument against that is with short-term pain for long-term gain. We need more reshoring and domestic manufacturing. We need to fix our supply chains and infrastructure, and that's the real overall goal of tariffs, and why it's truly a selfless act of this Trump administration for him to be doing this, because it's tricky. It's hard to navigate these waters, and there are short-term detriments when it comes to imposing tariffs. But it needed to be done. It's been needed to be done for about 30 fucking years now. And no other administration wanted to touch it because they knew the problems would make everything look rough at first. So I respect Trump at least for doing this. Oh, bullshit. The decision to use tariffs is entirely up to the executive branch. Well, I don't fully agree. Well, I mostly agree with that. I don't know if you're saying that against me or for me, but I mostly agree with you. Let me scroll up a bit here. Sorry, I'm late to the stream, says MMM. Appreciate that, though. No worries. Thanks for tuning in when you did. Make sure to like the stream if you haven't already. Keep up the great work, my brother. I appreciate that, MMM. Thank you. All right. Oh, view message. What's hidden here? I heard his mind is mostly on Epstein Island, says Nope. Well, that could be true, too, in all honesty, because though he denies that, of course, outright. Like, he tries to say, well, it's nothing there. It's a hoax. Like, but yeah, there's a lot going on right now. Some of it outright is just a hell of Trump's own making, bottom line. That's pretty undeniable. Epstein is a great example of that. The answer there was simple. You should have just released the files unredacted. But that's a topic for a different day. Finally, what I want to cover here, why the tariffs are also great. Trump, the other thing I give Trump a lot of credit for is how he wages economic war against China, which is, of course, the global threat of the world, right? We saw this play out. We saw actual brilliant strategy from Trump. Give him props when it's due. I say his strategy is lackluster overall, and it is. But his strategy when it comes to waging war against China has been pretty good, pretty spot on. It actually started with these tariffs, and we saw it play out even more so when he decided to do what he did with Venezuela. And I've covered in depth the reason why. Again, I'm just so smart. You don't see this narrative from a lot of channels, but when everyone was talking about fishing boats being blown up south of the border, oh my God, Trump's blowing up fishing boats. He's gone off the deep end. Why would he do this? Why would he do that? Gee, I don't know. Maybe because that's not what he was blowing up. First of all, you retards. But secondly, the main underlying point of Venezuela is basically the fact that Venezuela was being used against us. Their proximity and their closeness to our country pose a severe threat from a security perspective for us, and China was using Venezuela as sort of a proxy point to spy on America. They were building telecom infrastructure in Venezuela, and they were setting up shipping docks and ports for their ships and their boats. And of course, China used their economic debt trap, which they use against a lot of countries, to essentially own Venezuela without owning them outright. They loaned Venezuela, I can't remember how much it was now, something to the account of like $68 billion or something. And of course, Venezuela could never pay that back, so Venezuela was enslaved to China and was being forced to sell their crude oil to China at a heavily discounted rate. That benefits China. Their location to us benefits China. China had a strong building presence there in Venezuela, and now that's come to an end. And the tariffs are kind of a different front, but the same kind of thing that we're seeing out of Trump when it comes to him attacking China. The tariffs crushed China, and the highest tariffs we saw were imposed on China for a reason, right? Trump pretends all the time to have a good relation with Xi, and he says, "Oh, I like Xi, I like," that's all just for face. That's all just to save face. The fact of the matter is, China's our enemy. China's out to destroy us. China despises us, and China's about global domination. They want to be the world's hyperpower. They're jealous that we are, and they want their economy to topple ours. But our tariffs, these Trump tariffs, they were crushing the Chinese economy. Now, many people aren't aware of this, but China's economy has already been struggling for a couple of years now. They put out a lot of bullshit claims about how their GDP growth is continually at 5%. That's nonsense. Worse yet for China, they're going through a housing market crash similar to the one we went through in 2007, 2008. And so their economy's really starting to struggle. These tariffs come in, and now all of a sudden it crushes them even more. Now, for the simple-minded liberal out there who can't understand what a tariff actually does, they say, well, it doesn't hurt China at all. It only hurts America. No, not true. It hurts China, especially in the long run. And if it only hurt the country imposing them, then the question would have to be asked, why does every other fucking country impose tariffs on us? Maybe because it actually helps the country imposing them? Gee, I don't know. And I'm not going to go in depth again. I've gone in depth on videos on how and why that plays out that way. But the fact of the matter is, it's been crushing China. And Trump has been effectively, if nothing else, if so much else of this administration's been a disaster, the one thing Trump's been doing a great job on has been waging war without firing a single bullet against China. And I'm all for it. And that's what the tariffs do. That's what taking Venezuela did. And on top of that, the long-term gain of all of this is important to focus on. And this is hard for a lot of people. A lot of people aren't wealthy for a reason. They only focus on short-term comforts, right? That's a personal wealth issue. People focus on buying luxury as soon as they can afford it rather than saving their money. They only focus on what's in the now, what's going on today, tomorrow. They don't focus on next week, next month, next year. The tariffs are all about prioritizing America and setting us up in the distant future. And that's why I said early on in the stream, it's a sacrifice play by this administration to be imposing these tariffs, but it's an agenda that needed to be fulfilled, and a lot of other past administrations recognized this. They just didn't have the balls to do it. Trump actually has the stomach for this, thankfully. He may not have the stomach for mass deportations. He may not have the stomach to reject 600,000 Chinese students. He may not have the stomach to avoid a war with Iran. He may not have the stomach to put out the Epstein files unredacted, but he has the stomach for what he's doing with this and for the short-term pain that the tariffs would cause. It is all about the long-term gain, and it's pretty easy to deduce how and why the tariffs will be effective for us in the future. But nevertheless, that is why I like the tariffs, and that's the news on the tariffs in general. Basically, the short-term effects of the SCOTUS ruling are basically, in my opinion, just enough to annoy this administration. But for reasons stated above, I'll recap that real fast. Section 122, first and foremost, the acting as the temporary band-aid. Trump can keep the tariffs in place for 150 days and at up to 15%, though the order he signed today only put them at 10%. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 allows us to re-examine issues from a global perspective when it comes to national security and defense industry centered around foreign goods. And Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 allows the U.S. trade representatives to investigate foreign countries for issues like IP stealing and subsidies. Basically, all the reasons that the Trump tariffs were imposed in the first place. So the bottom line is the Trump tariffs aren't going anywhere. This SCOTUS ruling didn't rule against Trump tariffs. It just ruled against Trump using the IEEPA, the International Economic and Emergency Powers Act, to implement and impose those tariffs. This administration can get very creative, though, in using Section 232, 301, and 122 to keep the tariffs in place and keep them basically in place for the rest of his term, in my opinion. Love the channel, says Richard Grissom, 8764. I appreciate that. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a like on the stream, too, because it helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. Where do you get your talking points? Who gives them to you? I got some ground. I'm going to expose my sources to you right now. Nothing comment. Get ready. I do some research. I spend a couple hours per day reading news articles. I spend a couple of hours per day researching data and statistics and numbers. And basically, I formulate my own opinions. I know that's rare these days. But certainly if I was using something like ChatGPT, for instance, then I'd be against Trump, since that's a super gross liberal chatbot. And so, yeah, these talking points, this is just me talking. I have my notes right on my screen, actually, that I refer to. Usually I write them down because I stream out of my car where I live, of course. I live in my car. I'm homeless. But today I'm in my mom's basement, so I actually have a computer. And yeah, I just read articles. I write down bullet point notes. I don't script anything outright, but I just write down some bullet points to refer to. And then I have what's called knowledge, because I study and research stuff, and I read about stuff, and I ask questions. I know that's ridiculous nowadays in 2026, right? Like if there was a chat bot here on YouTube, it would be people saying, hey Guac, is what this man's saying true, Guac? Is this true, Guac? What he's saying true? Guac, tell me why American Advocates is wrong, Guac. But yeah, YouTube doesn't have that yet, so you can't actually use that as an argument in my chat, which is why in my chat, any of my dissenters are all just people with ad hominem attacks. They're like, do you live in your car or something? Why would I trust what you're saying if you stream out of your car? Well, gee, I don't know. Why do you trust what anybody says? You go to David Pakman and it's like, all right, he's streaming in a studio like I'm doing right now. What does David Pakman know that's any different? Where did David Pakman go to college? Where did Brian Krasenstein go to college? Where did any of these people go to college? It's called research. I like my car, says Richard Grissom. Me too. It's a guy thing. So you prepare, says Eric M. I know. Yeah, exactly. Imagine that. I prepare before I go live. I read articles and I watch news report videos. And then I do some research of my own. I start with Google, believe it or not. And then I use Google to find official.gov websites, inflation tracker websites. I look at actual data, right? And then I put it all together and I go, this looks like the big picture here. I'm going to craft a narrative around this. Let me go live now. It's so simple. Where do I get my talking points? They're my talking points. You get them from me, okay? That's the whole idea here. I'm live. I give you the talking points. You memorize them, and then you spread it on. That's the idea, all right? You spread the propaganda. I'll create it. So after admitting all of this, why do you support him giving so much money to ICE instead of Americans that need help? Well, can we not be doing both? Because at the end of the day, ICE is also going to free up our economy from illegal immigrants and foreign invaders in the long run as well, which will actually put more money in Americans' pockets because, in theory at least, it will allow Americans to experience cheaper costs when the demand for those goods have gone down, since there's not a bunch of foreign invaders in our country buying those goods all the time. Same goes for rent prices, housing market prices to some degree even, as well as just job availability. And that's a twofold issue because Trump, unfortunately, is pro H-1B visa, which he shouldn't be. We shouldn't be allowing any Indians in this country to replace Americans. But, he's fatally flawed on that one. But the idea of ICE is to get rid of all these foreign invaders who exist and take up space and consume our resources. And when you get rid of that and the consumption of resources goes down, declines more, you struggle with GDP for a little bit, which again looks bad. But the long-term picture is, once again, cheaper cost of living for Americans and cheaper rent at the very least. And so that's why I support ICE. These people don't belong in our country. They need to go. Bottom line. I don't like foreign invaders in my country. It's a guy thing. You wouldn't understand. You just don't have enough testosterone in your body. You're full of female suicidal empathy. America owes it to the third worlders to have a better life. No, we don't. We don't owe it to them at all, actually. They owe it to us to come here and make our lives better. That's why immigration should be occurring. And unfortunately, that's not the reality. They come here and they make everything worse. So get them out. In fact, we should be going further. We should be looking for excuses to revoke citizenships in this country. Get rid of even more of them. Not just the illegals, but any of the natural-born citizens that are going to commit crimes here. Oh, I was born to parents that immigrated here. Yeah? Well, you're also living off welfare. Citizenship revoked. You're just a freaking parasite in this country, living off our welfare. I don't care that you were born here legally to parents that immigrated here legally. If you're living off our welfare, you're a leech. Get out of this country. Who is paying all these small YouTube nobodies to defend pedos? Not once have I done that. And YouTube pays me directly. This is a very simplistic understanding of a complex issue. Well, thank you for that. Speaking in layman's terms is important for the masses. This chat is full of cattle and swine, after all, yourself included. And so that's what I do. I tone down the narrative so that simpletons can understand it. You're welcome. Are you not living off? No, I'm not. I do not live off American welfare. I own a business, actually. I own two businesses, technically. I own two businesses. I have an independent contractor job. Research leads to abandoning MAGA. Yeah, well, part of that might be true, but I don't think you'd be pleased to understand why I agree with that in sentiment. It's because Trump doesn't go far enough. The research shows Trump's not doing enough conservative shit. The research shows we've only very likely deported 675,000 illegal immigrants at most, and after you factor in all of the immigrants coming here legally, that number dwindles down to under 300,000, and that's just not enough. We should be deporting millions of these fuckers. Trump's not conservative enough. So yeah, research certainly led to me not being a part of MAGA, that's for sure. I'm not a part of what started off as a coalition and turned into a cult by Trump sicko fans. I'm very critical of Trump, but I'm critical of him because he's just not conservative enough. He's too much of a New York 1990s Democrat, in my opinion. I want a hardcore conservative. And hopefully we get that. Millions, baby, says Richard Grissom. Yep, exactly. All right, that's going to wrap it up, though, guys. I appreciate everyone who tuned in today. Bottom line is this SCOTUS ruling didn't rule against Trump tariffs, just against the method in which he's implementing them. The tariffs don't have to go anywhere, and very likely liberals are going to be disappointed when they find out that Trump can circumvent this ruling by imposing the tariffs using other various different trade acts that have been signed in prior decades. On top of that, the tariffs are a great thing for this country as a whole. I think I explained that pretty thoroughly already. And Trump is a Rockefeller Republican. Yeah, exactly. Keystone Liberty. Yes, exactly. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up, guys. Thanks for everybody who turned in. Please make sure to subscribe to American Advocates for more content like this if you haven't already. And be sure to like the stream. Also, if you haven't already, turn on post notifications so you're always notified of when I go live. And have a great evening, a good rest of your weekend. No economist agrees with you on tariffs. Well, that's a shame because that's actually true, Cole Ferguson. But I've been making all of the right predictions, and you can go back on this channel, 2 videos, where I predicted a decrease in dollar value and explained why that wouldn't be the end of the world for us. I also made a prediction on how tariffs would be de facto deflationary, on how, by the way, that there wouldn't be a midsummer 2025 Great Depression that hit us. And I predicted on basically that I would make money off of these tariffs, which I did because I invested in NVIDIA on the April tariff dip. and I made a lot of money. I had an excellent return on that. I basically almost doubled my investment on it. So I've been completely right, and all of the liberal economists out there have been completely wrong, and they look fucking stupid. At this point, you have to ask yourself, in fact, who has less credibility, a liberal economist or a liberal pollster? It's a coin toss at this point. Both should be disregarded, which is why you should continue tuning into this channel, because I'm fucking the smartest guy out there and I make all of the right predictions pretty much all of the time. In fact, the only thing I'm willing to say I got wrong last year was that Thomas Massey was an idiot. I should have never said that. I understand Thomas Massey better than ever nowadays, but that's a topic for a different day. Thanks everyone. Have a great weekend. I'll probably see you guys tomorrow, but if not Saturday, I'll go live Sunday. Maybe I'll do some sort of a sermon on why Christian nationalism is supported in the Bible or something, and I'll back that up as well. I've been meaning to do a video like that for a while, but either way, I'll see you guys over the weekend at some point. Like I said, make sure post notifications are turned on. Have a good one. Glory to America. God bless the USA. And God bless you if you're not one of the cattle or swine